All right, I thought I'd do a little review indoors since it's winter and I'm not really wanting to go outside and get cold. But of the Stove Lite with the alcohol or the spirits burner, which is, there's still a risk of carbon monoxide, obviously, with anything burning. But in this house, it's large enough that it's not going to be a danger to us to run the stove with a little bit of alcohol. So I'm just going to do the demo inside. Obviously, if you're ever going to have a fire, if you're going to run the solo stove using wood, then you need to make sure that you're doing it outside. So I've got here the 900 stainless steel pot by Solo Stove. I guess I need to learn how to use the bag here. Maybe loosen it a little more. Yeah, I can loosen it still. Why is that? It's just kind of twisted and weird. Okay, so the 900 stainless steel pot with little swivel handles there, and the Solo Stove Lite nests right inside. And I like to keep the bags. I mean, you could discard the bags because everything would fit, you know, nice and snug. But I like to keep the bags to keep the soot. This is a brand new set. I've never burned anything on this particular Solo Stove. But on the inside of the stove, you're going to get ash, and so I like to use the bags to keep the, you know, a little bit of ash and stuff that's going to be, even though you empty everything out, it's still going to be kind of dirty. So I like to keep them in the bags just to, you know, keep my pack from getting dirty with ash. But as you can see, and same with the pot, when you're burning wood on the stove, your pot's going to get soot all over it and get black. So it's nice to, again, use the bag to protect your pack from getting soot all over it. So, but as you can see here, you don't need the bags, and everything is going to fit in there nice and snug without the bags. So if you're trying to reduce your weight, which doesn't really matter because this is stainless steel and it's heavy, so it's not going to add any weight. So if you're mincing ounces, it's just, you know, silly when you're dealing with a stainless steel stove. It's already just kind of heavy, but it's still wide enough. I mean, the pros and cons of the Solo stoves there are pros and cons, but one of the cons is obviously the weight because it's stainless steel, but the pro is you don't have to carry your fuel if you're burning wood. But a lot of the areas I go backpacking, they don't allow fires, so you're left to some type of fuel like propane or isobutane, or a mixture of propane and butane, white gas. What else is there? There's alcohol, and that's what I love to use the most, is denatured alcohol. So this is not a demonstration of how to light the stove with wood, you know, a wood, you know, burning source of a fuel source of wood. That's not the purpose of this. It's to demonstrate the spirits stove, spirits burner. So what we've got here is a lid. I've already filled it with fuel because the lid has a nice little rubber gasket. So you can use that, and it's designed to fit inside the stove. It can be used with the Titan or the campfire, but that's what it is. And it burns clean. It actually does a really good job in the Solo Stove. Oops. So there's a little bit of risk here. The solo stove's pretty stable. It's engineered well. But if you're on uneven ground or rocky soil, you just want to make sure that it's going to be level and stay level, because this is lit. I don't know if you can see the flame, if the camera shows the flame, but there's a slight blue flame there. But alcohol burns, you know, close to invisible. You really can't see it that well. So if you spill it all over you, you're gonna, you know, alcohol, it's like any other liquid fuel, is gonna be evaporating, and that's what's really burning. But, you know, it's harder to see the flame. So it makes it a little more dangerous. But it's not very volatile, so it really has to be warmed up and before it starts to perform at its maximum heat. So there's the cook ring, which is really essential, so it has a proper airflow. And because we're inside at room temperature, probably around 70 degrees, this is going to be primed pretty quick and at its maximum heat pretty quickly. But outside, if you're in the weather, you're going to have wind blowing, and it's going to be cooler if it's winter or whatever, and it'll take a little more time. But I do a lot of I do a lot of camping and cooking while I'm camping. And I'm going to fill up this with, we'll just do 10 ounces of water. So it's probably enough for a packet of hot chocolate. So we've got this flame, it's really kind of primed up pretty good already. So this is probably a good amount for a cup of hot chocolate. Before I do that, this isn't really too hot yet, we've got this feature to the little burner. This is a snuffer and a temperature regulator. So having it fully open, you will pretty much create, you know, medium heat relative to the high that you're getting here. And of course you can slow the flame like this. This will probably put the flame out actually if you close it too much. But I really like this little alcohol burner because of this feature. This makes snuffing it a little safer. I have actually a lot of these little burners, Trangia brand. I'm a big fan of the Trangia for alcohol stoves. But you're like kind of sneaking it in there to snuff it. But this, you can have some good control and just snuff it out. So it's nice. So that's that. Let's do a little, put the lid on. And if you look at the timer on the video, you'll see how long it takes to boil. It's not going to take very long. But this is a brand new set. The Trangia has a series of pots and a kettle and all this stuff. And I like to backpack with it because I like to cook while I camp. I don't really like to rehydrate food unless I'm like doing something ultra light. But I really like cooking. So the Trangia is great because it's got several pots and stuff like that. But when it comes down to it, all you really need is a few simple, you know, cooking utensils. A pot and a spork or something is going to be just fine if you're trying to make things. I mean, it's not like you're out camping to have gourmet meals or anything like that. So this is really the bare essentials here, and it's going to perform great. But like I was saying earlier, I like to backpack and there's areas where, in certain times of the year as well, where you're not allowed to have fires. So, but you can have, you know, a stove or something like that And so I'll do that. And other times I will take the alcohol stoves when another reason that I'll take them is when I know the wood sources are going to be just saturated and wet. And you know, I can still get a fire going with wet wood, but it's not, is it worth it? I mean, you know, you can take a different stove. So if you're watching the weather forecast and everything is saturated and super wet, then this is a great alternative. If you're totally set on taking the solo stove, you can take this little alcohol burner and you can get somewhat of a protection from the wind, not a lot of protection from the wind, but better than some of these alcohol burners will have a little tiny stand that you can put around it so you fit a pot right on it. And those are extremely exposed to the wind and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of protection here from the wind, but not much. But Solo Stove sells a windscreen that goes up about this high, which would really speed up the boil time. And I've got it out in the shop. I didn't think to bring it. But just kind of showing here, there's really no heat right through here, and it's warm right here, and the higher I get, the more hot it is. But so this is, I mean, we could walk around with it like this if we were really careful. Not necessary though, and it would be dangerous. We've got a boil. We've got a rolling boil, and it's probably been boiling longer than that. You know, because sometimes you get to a point where it's starting to bubble. It's not really technically a boil, but this is a rolling boil, and you can check the time on the screen. If you are concerned about the boil time for 10 ounces of water, you can scrub back and find those details. I'm not someone who's usually in a hurry to eat like that. It's just like, if I'm starving, and an extra 2 minutes isn't going to make or break whether or not I die. So I don't really make too big of a deal with it. But we've got a good boil here, and I'll just kind of demonstrate. This handle's a little warm, so ow. That was warm, so that's just something to be aware of. I don't know if you could tell. Let's just kind of show this. Maybe we could turn the light off. I don't know if you can see the flame coming around the side of the pot. It's crazy that this is alcohol, and it seriously creates a pretty big good flame. I've made little alcohol stoves just for fun, and the boil times are like 7 minutes, 10 minutes. You know, it takes a long time to get to a boil. But when you have really good airflow, excellent airflow, and you got, you know, looks like the pot is spaced just right, you know, from the flame, and it really does create an ideal flame. So I'm gonna get another little hot pad here. So bring a little glove or something. Let me take this off, and you can see the flame in the dark as well. So you kind of see this is probably from the top of the alcohol spirits burner to the visible point of the flame. And it's probably a good 6 inches or so. And I don't know if you can hear it, but you can hear pressure, and you know, the gas is just being, you know, forced out. And looks like in this amount of time we've used about 1/3 of the amount of fuel in there. So I'll go ahead and snuff this out, and it'll go out. Well, this is the first time I've ever used the Solo Stove alcohol burner, I think. Have we used it at a outing?
I'm not.
I don't know.
Sure.
We've carried it. We've taken it as a backup, but I don't think I've ever used it. So I've actually used one. This one's brand new, but I go through so many Solo Stoves because I give them away. People are just like excited about it when they see them, and so I just remember that and I get them as a gift later. And so everything's really hot. It's going to be too hot for me to pull out of there, but if you look close, you can see the fuel level. I have the fuel all the way to the top. So if you don't know how these work, it's just a little reservoir that's open, and then there's at the very bottom of that space there is a very thin opening where the fuel, realistically the fuel is filling the hollow wall as well, but it is heating in this process and creating pressure and jetting out, and it's a pretty efficient burn. But that boil, we used about 1/3 of the amount of fuel in there, and that was undampered. So if you were to adjust this, the fuel lasts longer, and I know that is a fact because I specifically will damper things so that I don't have this excess of heat going everywhere. I just try to, cook things slowly, and the fuel lasts longer. So, and some things you don't need to cook on high. So that's another nice feature of this, is if you want to cook eggs and you don't want burnt eggs, you can damper it down a little bit and have a good meal. It's not all burnt. Not too hot to touch. So really what happens in there is when it gets really hot, the fuel is actually boiling. So filling this is fine. I can pack this away. I should probably let this cool a little bit more before I put on the lid, because with that gasket seal, it's going to build up a lot of pressure, and that could be dangerous when you open it up, when you open it up next. So I let that cool down completely. But this is actually pretty warm, but not too bad. And the water's, of course, is still hot. But if you have any questions about any of these things, let me know. I'm definitely a hobbyist when it comes to fire and stoves, specifically stoves of the lightweight nature. And this is Solo Stove's smallest stove. And it's, I don't have specific weights here. Sorry. I can get the weights. Hold on. We have a scale here. So the stove itself with the cook ring is just a little over 8 ounces. If you add the burner with about 2/3 of the fuel in there, with the cap and the whatever you call it, the little damper, that's 13.5 ounces. And if you take the pot, the 900 with the lid, you're at 1 pound 5 ounces, 1 pound almost 6 ounces. So that is heavy. When it comes to backpacking, everyone that is familiar with backpacking knows that that's a lot of weight to haul around. But if you're gonna just cook with wood, like I mentioned earlier, discard the little spirit stove. you only have to carry 1 pound, just slightly over 1 pound for these items here. And that's all you need to boil water. So it could be a toss-up. If you're going on an expedition and you're going to be gone for a couple weeks, this is going to be a lightweight option. It really is, because what kind of fuel you're going to have to bring if you're going to bring an MSR Dragonfly or something like that? How many canisters of fuel are you going to have to bring? So the bulkiness and all that kind of stuff is just kind of becomes unrealistic. So this definitely has its advantages. I mean, it's not lightweight, but as you compare other details of your pack and the distances and the days, how many days and all that kind of stuff, it may end up being lighter in the end. So plus you can have the nice ambiance of the golden and orange and red flame that come out of it, and it just kind of adds to the traditional camping atmosphere when you may not normally have that opportunity due to other restrictions you might have while backpacking. So it's a pretty good option. Again, this isn't a wood burning demonstration, but when you are burning wood to cook on and to boil water on, you kind of just have to prepare a pile of little chunks. Chunks are best. Sticks are just kind of, they start sticking out. It's best to get chunks, little chunks of wood, and throw them in there. Pine cones work good. Once you get going, pine cones are great, but you kind of really just have to be feeding it constantly. If you fed it for, if you completely packed it full and lit it on fire, it's going to burn for a couple minutes really strong. But if you let it fade down too far, and then dang, I got to stock it back up, it's just going to start smoking because your new fuel is cooling it down, and it's just going to start smoking. And so if you want to keep it good and hot, you just kind of have to constantly be popping, sliding, and this little opening makes that easy, but just keep popping in fuel. With this small light one, the Stove Lite, that's really the only approach to keep your fire going good and strong. It's best to have hardwoods. Where I go, we're dealing with spruces and pine and just really sappy woods, and so they get a good combustion or get really hot, and then they just don't last long. So if you've got hardwoods, it'll help your flame last longer. But I think it's a really good option. This is a great backup if you're in a scenario like I mentioned, if you're worried about burn restrictions or not having wood to burn, then heck, if you're just cooking for yourself or maybe 2 people, you could probably, with 1 fill of this, you could probably feed 2 people for 2 meals, probably, if you're rehydrating like a Mountain House meal or something like that. But if you're solely planning on using alcohol, then you got to plan on bringing a container with alcohol in it. And so then again, you're back to the scenario of weight and what is it worth it? Is it worth it to bring a certain amount of alcohol and add that weight and bulk? But it's not recommended, but you can put alcohol in like a little water bottle, because once you're done with it, you can collapse that down into pretty much nothing, and so you won't have the bulkiness of a container. But the alcohol, if you leave it in something thin like that, a thin plastic bottle, it's going to start eating away at the plastic, and you'll probably start leaking and stuff like that. But there's other durable plastics out there that you can compress down if you need to, or there's ways to get around the bulkiness of having fuel containers when it comes to alcohol. But you can't really compress a butane canister unless you're like Hercules or something. But anyways, again, if you have any questions, let me know. Solo Stove Lite in the 900 pot with the Solo Stove Spirits burner. Later.